And we're live.
Yay! Hello,
We made it.
hello. We are here intact. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and Death Company dreadnoughts to that 6+++ show. Some might say that this is a swamp market that we don't bring anything to, but those people have reckoned without our sheer relatable averageness, a force of nature that continues to find new and accurate ways to express itself. I am your host, Tom, and I am back from a thoroughly average performance at a Teams event with two of my good buddies. First up is my dear leader, Chris. How are you doing, Chris?
I am great, and I am relishing our sheer averageness.
Excellent. Have you done any hobbies since I last saw you, Chris?
I finished the zone thrope.
I saw that. It's a pretty zone thrope.
Done.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's done. The base. I've got this little dust to put up on the base and like the bottom of the bottle to make it look all like it's in the earth and stuff. And I'm pretty happy with it. I've started painting the other two zone thropes, and we'll just kind of go through. I should probably start painting some buildings and paint some Eldar Guardians for the Eldar.
Oh yes.
Probably get my Night Prison, the Night Spinner /5 prison.
Night Prison.
Night Prison.
Whatever you need it to be, baby.
I've built it. I just need to paint that and work out how many I'm going to run. Obviously, we've got the Eldar
6
coming out soon. We've got the Elder stuff coming out soon and the points and that. So once that's all done, then I can finally actually confirm how many wonderful
toys
things I'm going to fit in my Elder army.
Very, very exciting. Very exciting indeed. And I'm also joined tonight for his 6++ debut, Alex. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Still struggling with the heat stroke. It's been a warm weekend.
It's so hot. It's unreal. But it's very nice to have you here. Obviously, Alex made his team debut for us this weekend, playing with us at an 8-man teams event, which we're going to talk about tonight. And he did very flipping well, is how I would put it. He was an excellent asset, but we'll explain all the different ways in which Alex came through for us a little bit later on. Have you been doing any hobby, Alex, or is it too hot for that?
It's been a bit warm. It's also been a bit tired, but I have managed to get some priming done on some Terminators.
Oh, very
apparently
nice.
They're some of the new hotness.
Okay, sweet. Okay, very nice. What sort of Terminators?
It's going to be the Deathwatch variety. Add them into my current Deathwatch army, which I have been collecting since they released the Codex.
Just to clarify, I'm not meta jumping. I don't hobby fast enough to do that.
Yeah, Alex is not really a meta chaser in any sense, but has played his Deathwatch for a very long time. And obviously, anyone who's seen the Deathwatch rules will know that that's a scary thing to own right now. They're in a very, very interesting place following the release of their rules. Great. Okay, so what we are going to do tonight is talk through Allies of Convenience, which is an 8-man teams event, our first ever 8-man teams event that we went to up in Stockport. And we'll chat through the process and some of our games and those kinds of things as much as we're able to remember from that weekend. Then at the end, if we've got time, we'll have a little bit of a natter around some of the index reveals that we've seen, what we think of some of the armies that have been revealed now, and then we'll launch into any listener questions. So do feel free to chuck questions in the chat for us. We're very happy to field them. A few shout outs. Elo Woozle says Ed kicked us off the other stream and sent us here. Well, that's good. That's his job. I'm very glad that he sent you here. And also thank you so much to everyone who's been following Ed as he absolutely chews through data sheets. And it's basically trying to tell you every single unit in the game as it comes out. This was his completely self-inflicted undertaking, which he volunteered himself for without any prompting. But it's magnificent. It's quite the job that he's doing at the moment.
They are dropping like 5 indexes a day.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of stuff to be leafing through. But I think he's trying to give himself a crash course, so he's got an advantage for the league. I think that's what he's doing. He's just trying to get himself good and prepped. Shout out to Le Sombre, who also says totally average is the new epic. That's absolutely right. That's what we're patenting. That's what we're all about. And hello, Jack, who says, hey, gang. Nice to see you, Jack. Brilliant. Okay, so Chris, perhaps you'd like to set the scene for our listeners. What was Allies of Convenience?
Cool. So it was about last year, actually. They were kind of came across this event, and it was an 8-man teams event. Mm-hmm. And we'd never done an 8-man before, and we were like, well, that's what the proper WTC teams do. So
big boy teams.
Quite cool to check out. And also with just it being kind of a few months before WTC, it actually lines up to be quite a highly competitive event with potentially lots of like the local international teams coming across.
Yeah.
Obviously, with 10th being dropped very shortly, that kind of level of interest dropped off.
Yeah.
And so some of the WTC teams did drop out, but we still managed to get the 10 teams in. And it was, we had a nice variety of players going. We had a nice variety of lists. We're looking forward to challenging ourselves. The 8-man pairings process is completely new to us. We've never done it before. So that was kind of something to experience. And we just all love team events. So
we do.
I mean, we've got the WCTC style terrain as well, which we don't see out too often with singles events and everything.
Yeah, it was supposed to be. Then I think they changed it to Glasshammer.
Yeah, Glasshammer style, which was different actually, and I definitely enjoyed playing on it. I have to say, I thought it was a really good set. It presents different kinds of challenges, and it does make you realise the sort of, I guess, the particularities of UK TC, which although we're very used to it, definitely does present a particular kind of game, and I think it was nice to try something else.
Yeah, definitely.
So we had a cracking lineup. We had a real nice mix of players, right? Obviously, our 6++ team has all sorts. We've got all kinds of long-time players. Some are more competitive than others, but everyone's brilliant and everyone plays their heart out. And I thought we had a really nice mix of players, all of whom were there to give their best and have a great time. So we had Chris, who was running as Yunari, Incarn, all the good stuff, all the usual stuff. We had Alex, who was on guard. What was your sort of build for the guard, Alex?
It's your kind of typical Born Soldiers type list, but with lots of infantry, lots of player around outflank, deep strikes with some scions in. Your 4 Lehman Russ, very normal type list, but strong when played well.
Yeah, and you like your lots of infantry, don't you? Because that gives you a lot of mission play, and you've always been very good at that.
It's not just killing someone. I quite like to play around missions and just
Yeah, exactly. But he's got his
usually ends up tabling people if I do well anyway. So
as it should. And I was on Rusted Claw GSC, so lots of rock grinders and then big blobs of neophytes coming in out of the sky. I've played versions of this for a very long time now, so it was one I was very happy I could perform reliably within teams. And a last run out in 9th for my Patriarch with his double exploding 6s, and he had a mixed weekend, but we'll get to him later. And then what else did we have? We had Jamie East running Death Guard, quite vehicle and demon engine heavy Death Guard with sort of Terminator support and some Plague Marines. We had Dave Murdoch on the Grey Knights with a sort of a list he's iterated with for a very long time with Interceptors and Dread Knights and all those good things. And we also had Lee Jones out for his first weekend away from his newly born child. He's been very busy being a father. That's why we've not seen him on here so much. He's been taking his fatherly duties very seriously. But he was out for a rare weekend of nerdydom. And he was on Disciples of Be'lakor, what we call the Jack Tight list, which is Beta Nurgle, Be'lakor, lots of utility, and some supporting armigers for Chaos Knight shenanigans as well, because there's a lot you can do with them in Disciples of Be'lakor. And I'm now starting to run out. What else did we have?
We had some random scrub called Jack Tight.
Yeah, Jack Tight himself was some random scrub who obviously, he's been on a tear with demons, so we thought the sensible thing to do is take them off him and make him play World Eaters. But he seemed very keen to play World Eaters, actually, because I think he wanted the push to get them painted and built and ready to go. And so he was on loan to us from War Masters, so thank you, War Masters. Very grateful. Thank you. Appreciation to War
Even
Masters.
if the paperwork was a nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. And the loan fee is substantial, and we're struggling. But that's clubs like us have to make do with whatever we can get in the position that we're in. Yeah. That was our 8, I think.
Did you say Paul?
Oh, Paul James. Sorry, Paul. Sorry. I'm sorry, Paul. He's just so ever present that I just took him for granted there. And Paul James was on Dark Angels with Desolation Marines and Land Speeders and Talon Masters and I assume some Terminators. I can't remember.
That's big Terminators.
Wouldn't be Paul James if there weren't some Terminators in there somewhere. So I think across those lists we had a really good spread of armies. They can all score well. They've all got solid game plans and they all have a range of good matchups and relatively few sorts of things that they struggle with. And so I think the challenge for us was getting our head around 8-man pairings. I guess Chris is the one that had to do this most of the time and then get all the hate from the team, as always, as is your role.
Yeah.
How would you say 8-man pairings compared to 5? What were the key differences?
I actually liked it more.
Interesting. Okay.
Because it felt like a lot less pressure to be trying to think, well, if I do this, then they do this, and that sort of thing. Because when you've got 5 man, it's like, well, once we put one defender down, we've only got one defender. And when you've got that second defender, you're like, well, if they take this, they'll do this, and you're trying to guess it. But the 8 man, I didn't really care. I was like, I'm just trying to get us into, because we basically did a matrix for every game. And what we would do is we would give ourselves a 1 in the matchup if it was a 0-20, a 2 if we reckoned we'd lose like 5-15, a 3 if it was somewhere between an 8-12 or a 12-8, and then a 4 for a 15-5 and a 5 for a 28. And obviously there's quite a major flaw into that in terms of if you don't know your matchups, it's very much guesswork. So it was a combination of us trusting people's what they thought, and then also just kind of making it up as we went along and saying, well, actually, I think it's kind of this. But yeah, it's kind of just trying to it's like little battles in itself, and just trying to use your matrix just to generate. So if everyone put down a 3, which is a draw, you would come out with 8 games of 3, so 24. So basically, on the matrix, if you pair so that you're above a 24, then you've kind of gone right.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. It's like anytime you've got an opportunity to take a 4 or 5, you grab it, and you just do your best to avoid the ones.
Yeah. I don't think this is something that we felt we did very well, right? I think we were pretty happy with how we paired.
Yeah, we talked about at the end, but basically in every game we paired into an over 24.
Yeah. So I think that's a really nice position for us to be in. Obviously, our own estimations of matchups and then player skill always having its say means that you don't necessarily get the outcomes that you are hoping for or expect. But I honestly, if you compare how we were even a few months ago at teams events, I think it was a much slicker operation. And given that you were actually herding 8 of us, not 5 of us, I thought you were herding us much better, and we're much more used to herding us around.
5 minutes for everyone to figure out matrices.
Yeah.
When you only get that quarter of an hour between rounds.
Yeah, exactly. It can be quite stressful, but I think Chris handled it super well and did a great job with this. So the good news is we had some exciting rounds because we played some international teams and we played some strong teams and we had a really good time here. So we're going to go through the rounds one by one. Probably won't give you the spin on all of the games, but we'll give you certainly our perspective on how the round was going and what we learned and how those went. Aaron Wilson says, "Evening, Nobbins." Hello, Aaron. Nice to hear from you. I hope you're well. And Bright Hammer said it's easy to take Paul and his 4s across the board for granted. Yeah, we do it all the time. He's so dependable that we take him for granted. A little bit like his Legion in that sense. Great. Okay, so let's talk venue first because this is Dave Gaylord would say I'm going to go on a rant here. So I'm going to do a Dave Gaylord and go on a little rant. And I've been to Element Games twice in summertime for events. And on both occasions, the building has frankly been too hot for human beings to spend time in, let alone long periods of time doing something strenuous. There's nothing resembling an aircon set up in there. It's incredibly hot. It sucks in the heat. And we actually had players dropping out with heat stroke over the weekend. And so,
not us, other teams.
Not us. No, not us. Although I forgot to change. I forgot to change out of my jeans on the Saturday, and my legs still haven't recovered. I got like heat rash down my legs from that, which was pretty unpleasant. And I mean, the UK is getting hotter, so I understand that the conditions have shifted in the last few years, and as we're all adapting to. But I don't think Element can keep having events where they're subjecting people to that kind of condition. It's just not healthy for people. We got people running around providing water to everyone. A shout out to Scrivo, actually. He did a great job sort of helping to manage the event whilst also captaining a team. But he was literally running around getting water to people on the final game because he had a bye. And yeah, that's not good. That's something I love Element. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's an amazing venue and shop. I really enjoy the atmosphere they've created. But it's not safe to have people in that heat playing Warhammer for 9 hours. You just can't do it. So I think they need to look at solutions if they can find some for that. Other than that, cracking venue, right? It's brilliant. Like, big fan of Element.
Have
you ever been before, Alex?
No, that was my first time up at Element, and yeah, having the hall was nice enough. Train was different despite being the kind of standard format. Yeah, shot's lovely. Bit just toasty. Like really needed to work out some kind of aircon system or airflow or something. Like,
absolutely.
Lots of people were dripping.
Yeah, no, exactly. There was so we'll get to my game 5, but my game 5 basically it started raining outside, and I had a wonderful break in the middle of my game. Literally stood in the rain, and it was the best. And that was the level of heat that we're dealing with. But we can handle the heat. We're 6++. We know how to handle the heat. We're all about competition these days. And round 1, what do we get, Chris? What were we drawn into?
We were drawn into Leeds Salt Miners C.
Leeds Salt Miners C.
The interesting thing here is because a lot of the teams have been struggling with dropouts, there were teams who literally came to the event with only 6 players. There were teams who got down to 5-6 players and then got a lot of pickups. Mm-hmm. So this team that had been Leeds Salt Miners C basically became actually Clonsey Orcs, who are kind of like based up north and have got a few like good players and stuff. And so it's not, you would think, we're playing a C team. It wasn't.
No,
it wasn't a C team.
A lot of mercenaries all across the teams, weren't there?
Yeah. Absolutely. So we kind of,
as our own teams demonstrate, even the Omegon or the Lemon teams can be very dangerous. So
it's just so much. I think in general, there's such a depth of competent 40k players.
Exactly, there's just a lot of them around. Yeah, for sure.
Going into the match, we had a rough idea of who we'd start with and that sort of thing, and I can't remember the order of every pairings process, I'm afraid. Mm-hmm. But what happened in this game was we got down to near the end, and then we were both left with 2 cards each. And I was like, what's going on? And in my mind, I just hadn't read the full pairings process properly, because I was just like, we'll just go like 5th. The teams are 5 pairings, but there'll be just there'll
just be some left over to you pair up.
And that's not what happens at all. And so we got it completely wrong, and essentially we just both had 2 cards each, and we just randomly
just blind paired
blind them down. And the issue with what that ended up allowing was that Dave, as Grey Knights, got put into guard, into Auspex Tactics, Mr. Guard, which was the one thing which Dave wanted to avoid, and was a 1 on the was on the Matrix. So Dave wasn't very happy. Well, Dave was okay with it to begin with. After the game, Dave wasn't very happy about it. But such is life. So we got the actual process wrong, which is what led to kind of that thing. But just is.
But we learned that over the next rounds, didn't we?
Yeah, the next game.
Another learning experience for us.
So the pairings that we had were Alex into Tyranids, so it should be said this mission was recover the relic.
Yes.
So when you're going about your pairings, you want to be thinking, well, what armies are going to do well in these boards and these missions? And what we were very aware of was that recover the relic allows
very hard to drop people's primary at any stage, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So you're not going to get big blowout scores realistically, as long as, and even if you're in a bad matchup, you could play quite defensively and probably.
It's a defensive player's dream, because you can sit tight, almost not interact, and still score a very healthy score.
So you're hunting any sort of really weak list, and you're just trying to gain that edge, and it's kind of just, it sounds really silly, but you've just got to have that. In this particular mission, it's just try and get lots of like little victories. If you can.
Absolutely,
it's kind of how it's going to work. So we ended up with, and I'm just going to go in order here. I can't remember what order we paired in, but it was Alex's guard into their Tyranids, our Death Guard into their Tzeentch Demons, our Grey Knights into their Guard, our World Eaters into their Chaos Knights. No one in our army was, apart from the Guard, really wanted to play to Chaos Knights.
We're all very spooked by Chaos Knights,
So Chaos Knights provided a bit of an issue for us over the weekend to pair into. It was myself into Votan. I managed to take that, and that was one which I was looking for, because I played Votan before and 20-0'd them, so I was confident going into the matchup. So I was like, right, this is a matchup that if we can engineer, then, and I think I can't remember whether I chose it or not, they chose me, but that was one I was happy with. Lead into demons into custodes. That was one which we didn't really know how it would go.
No.
Paul's Dark Angels into their orcs. No, it says orcs here, but it's not orcs. It was Sisters of Battle. And again, Sisters on those sorts of defensive missions are going to be really
They're
hard.
tough. They're a tough cookie.
Paul has a Desolation Marine, so we thought he might be able to get a bit of a nudge up there. And we had Tom's GSC into World Eaters.
Yeah, which is a matchup I've played a lot, and I understand it. It's always a close one, but it's one. Yeah, I was happy to have a go at and try and leverage.
So yeah, we felt in terms of the pairings that we probably had a small win here. Dave was potentially a bad one, so we were going to have to get a bit of a bigger win to try and mitigate it out there. But elsewhere, but like looking at scores, you can see they're all reasonably close.
Yeah, exactly that. And the challenge on this particular mission was going to be achieving those big wins to swing it when so many games were likely to be close. And then given that Dave had been matched into guard down the end, that also put us in a very difficult position because it meant that we were going to be down some points there. It's worth saying that the guard player that Dave played was Auspex Tactics. And I was next to them on my table, and they, even though it was a massacre, they looked to be having a lot of fun with it, and they were certainly enjoying it, although Dave was obviously a bit unhappy at getting totaled, and it was a matchup that was very rough for him. They did have a lot of fun with it, and Auspex Tactics' tanks were very nicely painted, I thought.
Nice.
So let's chat our rounds, and then we can see how it all fit together. How did you go into the Tyranids, Alex?
I managed to go first, which is pretty key when it gives me a nice bead onto the Tyrant Guard stood next to a Shard Gullet.
Yeah, nice.
Now, picking them up should have given me an advantage, but Tom and I, we'd gone up at, woke up at 4:30 in the morning.
We were up at 4 to get
already warm. And definitely I didn't press the advantage, use the activations as well as I could have.
Amen.
Tight game in what should have been more of a blowout for me. I was looking for that higher score. Like Dave, playing the Tyranid, is a lovely guy, played it really well. My dice didn't quite, I'm not going to blame the dice, but they didn't help me at some points. He got plenty of those inbuns from first turn and ended up at 10-all, but I probably should have gone 12-8, 13-7 on that one to be fair.
Yeah, and it sounds like there were a few key moments where things just stuck around on objectives and held their own that little bit longer.
Yeah, it was like there was a lovely little regen he did where he went from me dropping him to a 4 on the primary, which is huge, and he ends up taking a 12 on it by regenning across from one side of the board to the other with termagants. Yeah, and I'd taken all 29 down to 3 of them left in that previous turn.
The old Gant regen. It's just so brutal. It's just so dangerous.
I mean, that's huge swing on a mission like this as well.
Yeah, it's a NID player's favourite thing to do, swing it for a 12. They love that. How did you go into the Votan, Chris?
So I got to go first, and you look at any Votan army, they just don't have enough stuff.
They don't.
He's really worried about my character. They are surprisingly resilient, though.
They are.
And there's he had 2 Terminator bricks. He had a few bikes. He had 1 Hecaton, a few characters, a unit of 10 warriors, and then some Thunderkin with Grav. But I got first turn. I kind of just went, put the pressure on, like kind of both sides. Killed the bikes, which was the goal. Well, I killed 1 unit of bikes. The other unit of bikes withstood 5 striking scorpions very, very well, which is quite annoying. But I was able to keep putting pressure on. But it was a really weird game where he was killing the stuff I was allowing him to kill. I wasn't quite chewing through him as quickly as possible. And he'd set himself out for the draw. I was going in it with I need to win big here. And as we hit kind of like turn 3, I'm like, oh, this isn't quite going how I kind of hoped it would. But turn 4, we just hit this break point where I just knifed through him. And the Incarn was getting to teleport around and kill a few decent amount of things. And basically, at the end of his turn 5, he had just going into his turn 5, he had just the Carl left. And because Votan's secondaries aren't very good, he chose the one where he has to hold objectives at the end. He didn't hold any objectives at the end. He chose the one where he had to kill stuff with judgment tokens on and loses points if units are alive with judgment tokens, Well, he killed 8 units with judgment tokens, and at the end of the game, I had 8 units left with judgment tokens. So he scored 0 on that. So yeah, I was able to get a 17-3 victory, which at the time was feeling rather necessary.
Yeah, very much so. And that's a solid result as well. And that's one where our matrix has come up for us and done as expected. So I had World Eaters and I had Tom, who was a very, very lovely man, very, very funny. And this is one of those matchups where it heads for a draw pretty much. Whenever I've played it, it heads for very close territory, and then it's just about who can muscle a little bit of an advantage against the other. Very funny exchange. Everyone's obviously once after you've done the pairings, you don't usually know who actually the player you're after is. So there's always people looking to find each other. And he was like, "Who's the GSC player?" And I put my hand up, and he just went, "Fuck!" And then we went over to the table, and I was like, "Why'd you go fuck?" When I put my hand up, he's like, "Oh, well, when we do the pairings, I always like to look at everyone and sort of try and get a read on them." And I was just looking at you and thinking, "Oh, that guy's just assessing everything way too much. I don't want to fucking play him." He's looking and thinking and taking it all in far too much.
There's some proficient
Yeah, I absolutely don't want to play that guy. and then he drew me. But we had a very, very, very funny game. And I mean, I got the edge on this one, and it was simply a case of just being able to pull good angles and get seismic cannons into World Eaters and get some bikers up and pop the transports and different things. And this was just a fairly foot-slogging World Eaters list. But I kept failing to prosecute. Like, as we were saying, this is a really hard mission to shut someone's primary down on. But I absolutely was in position to knock him off and the objectives a few more times, and for him, I reckon about 3 times. And due to a whole series of just bad calculations or a little bit of bad luck on my part, I kept falling short on it and not quite managing to do it. There were a couple of times where I managed to not manage my CP correctly, and I have a turn-off intervention strat that you really need into World Eaters to stop them just sliding back onto things and stopping you shutting down their primary. But I just kept managing my CP badly, let him intervene a couple of times. And so it ended up as a 14-6 win. But it was one where I just hadn't played well enough and could definitely have played it a lot better. And, me and Alex, obviously, as I say, we were knackered from the drive up. I don't play well when I'm on no sleep. But I also just undercooked it a couple of times and needed to just leverage my advantage a bit better. So 14-6 was all right, and it was a good win given what the Matrix says, but it was one where I felt like it was there for me to take more points from than I did.
So, across the board, then we've got the issue that Dave's lost 19-1.
Yeah.
And we're trying to drastically make up for that.
And that's what's hurting us, yeah.
Yeah, we've got Alex on 10-10. So then Jamie lost 12-8 to the Demons. Got then Jack, who, as Jack does, ground out an 11-9 win into the Chaos Knights, which was really good for us. But it was the 3 we were kind of thinking. I won 17-3. Lee took down the Custodies 13-7.
Yeah, very nice.
Paul, kind of as expected, drew 10-10 with the sisters.
Yeah.
Because the thing was, the sisters just sit there on their half of the board. And it's
they do. Yeah.
So Paul has to go out and push, which can be risky. And it's kind of
and Valorous Heart is very durable against Desolation Marines. They just don't care about AP 1 and 2 at all.
Yeah. And Paul and Tom obviously won 14-6. So we're adding it up and we're like, oh, shit. And basically the way the rounds work is you need, as a team, to get to 86 and to win. If you're within, if it's 70, like 74, 76, 76 to 85, it's a draw, something around that. And we got to 84.
Oh.
So we drew by 2 points, which was like, damn it.
It was a shame. It was a sad start because we felt like we'd paired well, a lot of us had played well, and but the mission had definitely contributed to making it so much closer. Yeah, I was going to say, I'd much rather have played like a top team on that, because then at least, if they've got
the defensive advantage.
Yeah, you can just shut it down and keep it close. But when we felt we had list advantage and player advantage to a lesser extent, it was a bit of a shame. But all credit to the lead Salt Miners players. They all got stuck in and had a real go, and some of them played really, really well.
Yeah, they hung in. It's a lesson that in this kind of teams pairing, you do need to ensure you're dunking their scores wherever possible.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, this is still something I'm still getting used to, and it really does. once you've played a few international players and been properly dunked, you understand why they do it the way they do, because every single point matters, right? It's not just for the sake of it. It's because the overall score depends on you shutting your opponent down. It's not good enough to just win by a small margin. So that's something we're all still figuring out. And I definitely look at my game and I was like, there's at least another point or two I could have squeezed out of that.
I easily had that 2-3 points in that game of mine to take the round. It's just you see it afterwards, and
and that's the one thing. It's important not to get too hung up on it, because it is what it is when it happens. But it's you definitely do end up in teams sort of really feeling over your mistakes and sort of thinking about where you could have squeezed extra points out, and slips do end up being costly. What do we get next, Chris? What was our next round?
Yeah, well, we drew some chumps. I think you would. We drew Scrivo's chumps because we drew
Team Wales B
team. I mean, we can use that title rather loosely.
Yes,
there was some Welsh presence, but
there was some, but not much. But there were some very good players there. And again, pairings went kind of as we thought. Well, not as we thought, because I didn't really have any thoughts going into it. A lot of the time was half looking at the matrix, half just going with gut. But we kind of...
We had some not great matchups in this pairings, didn't we?
Yeah, so we had the very interesting one where Jamie East had put himself down as a 4 into Imperial Knights. So you're looking at the matrix and you're like, well, this makes sense to do then, doesn't it? Because
giving us the best score around anyone.
Yeah.
And so the other stuff was kind of went okay. We were a bit concerned with Lee going into Custodes. It was a double warden, and we really didn't know how that would go. But he had just played Custodes, so we felt like maybe that's okay. Alex was playing into Scrivo's Dark Angels, which again, Alex got lots of infantry. Scrivo had 20 Desolators.
It's also worth saying that this is Data Scry Salvage, which for a guard player does go one of two ways usually.
Yeah.
I mean, this mission in general does, I guess, doesn't
it?
It's
the polar opposite of Relics, isn't it?
It's going to be a blowout mission, so you need to get your pairings right. We had Jack into GSC, which, as Jack said, was probably going to be a close game again. Then we had Dave was going into... they chose the Grey Knight Mirror.
Yeah.
So Dave was playing into Grey Knights. Fair enough. We had Paul Dark Angels into Ed Watts, who's obviously an exceptional player.
Yeah, he's very good.
And his Eldari. As we said, we had Jamie into Knights. We had myself into Black Legion.
Ooh.
And I had literally no idea what was in this list. Nobody looked at it. Just been told it was Black Legion. I was like, probably okay. And then we had Tom into Mr. Jack Asher's
the one and only Jack Asher. Yeah, so I people who know me know I'm a big fan of Jack Asher. I mentor him. We play all the time, and he's a fellow Drakari lover, and he was on his Drakari. But I was very conscious in this matchup that GSC Drakari is a very GSC favouring matchup, especially on a mission like Data Scry.
You called that very early on as that was the matchup you wanted.
Yeah, that was very much what I was after on these boards.
So pressure was on.
I had put pressure on myself, and there were a lot of jokes about Jack becoming the master and me being relegated to the apprentice if I lost this game. But I was confident on this mission that it was one I could deliver on.
And essentially, we went off to our pairings, and I mean, I'm just starting my round one. Is Jamie is sending on the chat, guys, I'm so fucked. I've only just started to stop deploying.
I haven't finished deploying yet. There's a lot of guardsmen to get down.
Yeah, and it was like, okay. And then, 5 minutes later, man, let's get this is fucking bullshit. Everything's -1 down, blah, blah.
-1 damage, mortals everywhere.
And so our only real hold on the game the round at this point is that we're going to be on 0-20. And then very swiftly after, we're getting messages from Lee, who's going, guys, I'm so fucked right now. They've just got the whole board. I'm completely screwed. This is 0-20. I'm so sorry.
I was next to him, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to lose 0-20 here. I think."
And
That was about turn 1.
So for the rest of us, we're like, right. So we're 40-0 down. Things aren't looking too great. But I played into Pete, who was a lovely guy. We had a great time with his Black Legion, and it wasn't. I think the list is probably fine into some things. It was had like Abaddon and 8 Terminators with the -1 to wound. He had all the characters to buff it, but he had some Raptors. He had a Venom Crawler, a couple of Decimators, a couple of Hell Brutes. It was just a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, I didn't realize this until after we'd started playing, and this was the second time it's happened when I played a Black Legion player. They've not measured out their deployment zone correctly or realized where their deployment zone is. And so he thought this left-hand ruin was off limits, despite the fact that I put loads of stuff in mine.
Eldar bullshit.
So he started his Terminators just in the back, but I got to go first. And I whizzed forward. I killed all his cultists that he had. I did what Eldar love to do, which is sit on his home field objectives, so he can't start data scrying the middle objectives for the primary. And he had a lot of stuff in Deep Strike. And I'm like, right, over to you, mate. At which point he teleports his Terminator blob over my side. Shroud runners do what they do best and minus his charge.
Yeah.
He then fails.
Yep.
And at that point, I'm like, right, this unit's got all its buffs on, but I still feel like you can take it down.
You absolutely do still rinse it. Yeah.
Sent a bunch of stuff over there, loads of shots, loads of incarn. I took it. I still only killed 5, right? But at the same time, my sniper was going picking up some characters, and Retreat Master ran across and picked. So I think I picked up 2 of the 3 of the characters in the first 2 turns, and that kind of just meant those buffs weren't there. And he didn't have enough stuff. His shooting wasn't that big a deal. I was able to really grind on that primary and make sure he scored a 0 on that. So it ended up finishing 100 points to 19. And I was able to kind of have that reassuring element in my game that I'm pretty sure I've got a 20-0 here. And then Jack's also going, yeah, turn 1, this is a bit dicey. And I think Jack said that he kind of had a turn 2 where he was like, right, you've given me a lot of things to kill. Well, it might have been turn 3. I'm going to see if I can kill him. And I'm sure Jack can fill this in, but Jack was able to take out quite a lot of stuff. And
apparently the World Eaters do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
World Eaters can kill lots of bikes. So I managed to get the 20, which was quite good, to counter out Jamie East's 0-20. And that's where we were kind of at the time.
Very nice. Alex, what was happening on the top meta showdown between Guard and Dark Angels?
What happened here was Scribbo had some PTSD from some practice games we'd had. Where I had used the Cassigan and just told his Desolation Marines to get out.
Yeah. Ouch.
So what happened? Scribble in the chat here.
Yeah, saying skip it. No. I want the spin.
In Data Scry on his back ruin box, which, as anyone knows, you're not going to score primary from there with 6-inch move Marines. Which kind of just gave me the board presence needed to just hold him to 0 primary until turn 5 when he got bottom of turn.
Okay. Ouch. Yeah. Okay.
Scribbo then also gone behind enemy lines and used all 3 speeders to try and take out a Russ. Try.
Okay.
Multi-melters into T8 only.
Yeah, they don't love it.
It's not a guarantee, which means that's another secondary down. So I can just kind of hold station, aided by the fact that apparently 2 mortar squads kill 4 Desolation Marines without line of sight.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's absolutely nuts that happened.
So that actually ends up then a 97-44 and a 20-0.
Very good.
Finishing quite early enough in the round to send it out and go, look, we've got another big win here.
Yeah, and it's again, you start realizing why these top players like to mash people and then finish early. Because again, it's very reassuring for your teammates if someone has managed that. Like if someone sat having 20 overtime, you're like, oh, I would think you were a tosser if this was a singles event, but I'm actually very relaxed and relieved to know that you're getting results for my team here. And so you do start to see it from their angle to an extent, and it's interesting in that sense. And so I was next to Lee Jones, and so we had 2 games going at the same time. And as you say, in the early stages of that game, he's playing against Joe, who I know is a very good Custodes player, who's beaten me twice at narrative events, the opportunist. And Joe took the ball with all his golden boys, his Custodes, and Lee was looking at me like, and I was looking over there, and the problem I always have when I'm watching Lee's games when he's on Demons is I don't know what's dead and what's in reserve. Like, so you're looking over there, and you're like, I can see Beast of Nurgle, they're not on the board. Like, if they're dead, he's definitely screwed, and if they're coming in, he's probably actually going to be okay because they do a lot when they arrive. But at the time, that looked really rough, which meant in my game, it looked rough literally immediately, which meant in my game against Jack, I was like, I have to be really, really full throttle. I mean, it also, as I say, everyone had been giving it a lot of chat about me and Jack and me ending up losing and looking like a wally for trying to get the matchup. So I was feeling under quite a lot of pressure. Drakari GSC is a weird one. I played it into Nicholas Willingay and he absolutely thrashed me. And I felt in that game that first turn was very big. I think first turn takes it from being a battle for a solid GSC win into a real whitewash. And in this game, I got first turn, and that was massive because essentially what I did was I quite often with Rustic Law, I keep one squad of neophytes just on the ground and they run. And then I use my redeploying turn 1 blob. And actually what I do on Data Scry is take both the extreme corners. So I've got neophytes bottling up on both sides and obviously threatening to tag it and obsec it. At the same time on Data Scry, I sent 4 bikers through and they killed some Reavers. I was basically just trimming all of Jack had picked Engage, so I was just trimming all of Jack's quick stuff on the edges and just like leaving him with nothing but his most important units to come and play in those corners with. So I killed some Reavers, but also crucially the bikes tapped onto the back objective, which meant he couldn't do Data Scry, right? So what I did for the first couple of turns was just keep throwing stuff onto there to make sure that Jack couldn't do Data Scry, because I was like, primary difference in this is going to be massive, because he's on end of turn, he's going to get some points at the end, so I need to be shutting it down as completely as I possibly can in the early exchanges. And the nice thing about taking the corners with GSC is that in their efforts to come and deal with you, they tee up crossfire all over the place. It's on the missions where you can stretch play. GSC are really, really good because you're just going to get crossfire and exposed and +1 to hit and wound all the time. And that was very much what was happening here. Jack fought back really admirably, kept pushing, kept chucking stuff forward, killing right through my stuff. It was a very bloody game. Lots and lots of stuff died on all sides. It was a very prolonged duel between like the Patriarch and some pure strains and some Incubi and all the nasty sort of Drakari characters in the middle. That was really fun. Like that kept going down to like the last saves and units kept surviving and no one could actually really get a decisive advantage there for like 2 turns. So that was probably the most fun bit of the game. If you looked away from the joyless corners where I was just drowning the objectives in OBSEC. And so in the end, that ran away on secondary game and primary most of all. And Jack did manage to grab a bunch of points at the end. And so it was a 19-1. And I have to say, considering how strong and aggressively I'd started, I actually think staying in there and fighting and getting his one was really important and really, really valuable and showed that Jack has got a sort of fighting spirit, even in a difficult situation. So, yeah, different game if he goes first and he can stage more stuff. But as it was with the GSC getting the jump on the Drakari, it is very hard for Drakari. I've always found it to be when I've played it.
Yeah, so we're now bouncing our way back. So we've got Alex on the 20-0. Jack's performing. I'm like keep getting updates from Jack, and the score keeps bouncing somewhere between an 11-9 and a 9-11, and it's all. I think is this the game where Jack's opponent went on turn 2? I think it's a 15-5 to me.
Yeah, I think his opponent predicted a 15-5 win. Never do that. Yeah,
and Jack was like, I don't think so, and pulled out the 12-8 win. Like an absolute boss. And then Lee dropped down his Beast of Nurgle.
Yeah.
And all hell broke loose.
Yeah. Just killed his way through Wardens, didn't he?
Just him and Bellacore just went to town on the Custodes, and Lee managed to pull out a 10-10 draw.
Yeah, it looked like they'd both had a proper experience. They were both knackered after that
game. So like that was amazing, considering how the game kind of
Yeah.
obviously felt to the team. For Lee to put out 10-10 was amazing. Early on with Dave, again, he was like, oh, someone said, oh, Dave, I went to Dave in like round 1, oh, how's it going? He went, I failed gate every time so far. He was in a good place. I was like, oh no, Dave. But full credit to Dave, because he performed rather well in the mirror and pulled out an 18-2 win. In a mirror, that's impressive. But again, I guess the mission still bounces back and forth. Fuck you, Paul. And so we're all really happy. Tom's got a 19-1. I've got 20-0. Jamie's obviously a 0-20. Dave's on an 18-2. We've just got lots of wins. Meanwhile, Paul is sweating his ass off against Ed in the Eldar game, and they're like thinking it through when we go.
It looked very intense, didn't it?
And it was really intense. And obviously, we didn't tell them that we had already won, and this result didn't matter, and they were fighting for every point. But yeah, they ended up drawing, which is actually a really great result because
I think so.
Eldar list is good into Marines,
Yeah,
and Ed is a very, very strong player.
Yeah. Ed's been doing tremendously well in recent times. Been winning a bunch of things, and so yeah, I think him and Paul drawing reflects on Paul's quality.
It wasn't a 4, was it, Paul?
No, it wasn't a 4, Paul.
What a letdown.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I don't have the score to hand here, but we won that game reasonably comfortably.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our reward for that was Team Island.
Yes.
Who
internationals
and who had flown over. They came 12th at WTC last year.
That's very good.
Somewhat competent.
Yeah. They've got a few
can Warhammer.
Stuff, but obviously they're training for WTC shortly and that sort of thing. So yeah, and again, pairings we actually felt went pretty well.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with it.
I think not quite as well as our next game, but in this game I'm looking down the matrix and I'm going, we've got a lot of 3s and 4s here.
Except from me. I had a lot of 1s. I was a protected puppy in that round.
Yeah, so there was this thing where sometimes the guard were quite hard to pair, and it was like, oh, there's only like 1 or 2 things that we can try and get Alex into. Obviously, there is the element that the opposition might well be seeing the matchup completely different.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
But having said that, Alex's matrix wasn't the prettiest here, which makes the next bit even more impressive. But anyway, after the dust had settled, our pairings were Gene Stealer Colt, Tom into Tau.
Yep. Matchup I was fairly happy with.
Yep, so we're happy with that one. Jack into, it doesn't tell me here. So I don't know what Jack played. Maybe you can say in the chat. I was into World Eaters. Now I took World Eaters because Jack's playing into Guard. I was playing into World Eaters because I didn't want Grey Knights into World Eaters. I was like, I'm probably better placed to handle it, but I hadn't played the matchup before.
Yeah.
And it transpired it was into Team Island's captain. So that was always going to be a bit dicey. Jamie was Jamie choice of something in Drakari.
I made an error here. Because I remember Jamie's little face looking at me like, how's Death Guard Drakari? And I went, Drakari hate Death Guard. And this is true. This is absolutely true. Drakari hate Death Guard. Most Drakari lists run a bunch of lads doing melee with damage 2. And they go into Death Guard and they fight last and they have -1 damage and they get massacred. So without looking at any lists, I was like, yeah, great matchup for Death Guard. Get him in there. So on my advice, Jamie went valiantly into the Drakari. But it was not your ordinary Drakari list. No, sir. It was triple Ravager, triple Reaper. So an absolute shit ton of damage 8, strength 4, D3 plus 3 damage flying at you for basically 5 turns because you're Death Guard and you can barely shoot back. So yeah, that didn't go quite as we anticipated.
Yeah. I guess, a basic lesson we learned, and we did follow this through afterwards, was make sure you look and read all of the lists. But
oh yes,
that's the problem when you've only got 15 minutes between rounds.
we needed to do it before the event, didn't
and I
we?
mean,
But
the
actually,
Tourney Keeper as well, right?
It's
Tourney
worth
Keeper
saying
didn't help.
Yeah, Tourney Keeper's shit to read lists off, and also half the teams hadn't even submitted lists by the time we were on our way there, so it was harder to do research ahead of time than normal. Jack Tight didn't read any lists, and
We
absolutely
didn't
right.
need to give you lists, Jack. We just sent you at them.
Yeah.
Went,
Jack just wrote
do this.
3 on fucking everything.
Yeah. We'll talk about round 5 a bit later, but
yeah. So that wasn't ideal. Paul has gone into the Chaos Knights. Paul obviously always backs himself in any game.
situation.
I know he was a bit like, oh, Chaos Knights, but we're like, someone's got to take him. No one else wants them.
Yeah.
You can. And we've managed to pair Alex into Monster Mash. How did you feel going in, Alex, about Monster Mash?
I was concerned about Scarbrand because as soon as he touches my lines, it is game over. Be'lakor with guns is not fun. A phase cap Bloodthirster flying at you is also not fun. And with the mission there, which I think was a scouring.
It was the scouring. This was why your matrix was very shaky.
Nice and close.
Yeah.
And this was another lesson in reading lists again, where actually by the time you've put 4 monsters in, there's not a lot of space left for anything.
No.
So I'd put the 1 on the matrix because it goes wrong very quickly.
Yeah.
And on the scouring, he just stands behind a wall and I can't stand on an objective.
Yeah.
So we've got Alex on a 1, which obviously is not a great pairing. We've then got Lee into Iron Hands.
Yikes.
We're like, we don't really know the Iron Hands into Demons game. Who knows? And then finally we've got Dave's Grey Knights into Sisters. Now, obviously they can have the 5 up to 9. But Dave's got a lot of storm bolters and stuff, and they can't keep making 5 ups. So I guess the pairing also went from this. I guess now we've spoken through it. At the time, we felt kind of okay-ish, but I think there's a lot of games in the balance or not that great.
And I think the nature of the round as well was just that we knew we were playing very good players. So I think that slightly colours how you think and feel about the matchups that you're getting, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah, I think on. If we take like the Jakara game, that becomes a 19-1, or 1-19. So Jamie gets absolutely smashed.
Yeah.
Whereas actually on our matrix we've got that as a 4 or maybe even a 5.
Yeah.
So it's that sort of thing.
It's just mistakes in analysis, which we'll get better at.
Yeah, exactly. It takes time, and and also we've been up for at this point 12 hours.
Yeah, I'd played at least 3 times as much Warhammer as I'd had sleep by this point.
Yeah, exactly. We're very hot. We're very sweaty. It's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tom, do you want to talk us through Tau?
Yeah, I'll talk through the Tau. So I played against Zach, and Zach was lovely, very competent player, quite shy. And the funny thing with Zach that I really liked was that actually the harder the game got for him, the more he seemed to be enjoying it. He really perked up. I don't think he was sure what kind of a game he was going to get when he sort of rocked up to the table. And then by the end, when it was real, like a real back and forth, he was having a great time. And he kept saying, like, this is such a fun game. This is my favorite game of the day, etc., etc. Tau GSC is an interesting one. I've typically had the better end of Tau GSC, but I think also that the industrial cult type builds tended to be more of a problem for Tau when they first started doing the rounds than I would say Rusted Claw is. I think Rusted Claw is a bit of a compromise that you have to take to deal better with Space Marines of different types and to deal better with artillery of different types. That's why people have moved to Rusted Claw. It's why I play it. But it's not as effective into Tau, I would say, as perhaps the industrial cults is. And the other crucial bit of tech here is that Zach has gone for Borkan. And this proves to be massive in this game because Borkan is -1 strength off of shooting weapons, below strength 8, I think it is, but I don't know. I think it is.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
-1 strength.
Which you might remember, it was a very popular pick when Harlequins were doing the round with mass strength 6 shooting.
Yeah.
And it has the exact same effect on GSC, where it pips seismic cannons down from 6 to 5, which means that they're much less reliable at hurting particularly crisis suits of different flavors. So it's a fantastic tech choice, and it was really, really good here. Now, in this game, we both line up and we both want first turn. Let's not lie. In this matchup, we both want first turn to start doing things and start making things happen. Zach's got like double Riptides and Crisis, and then lots of mission playing, Chaff, Devilfish, Breaches, Pathfinders, Crew, all that stuff. I go first and I kill all of that stuff. There is none of that stuff left. I'm like, all your mission playing, I'm going to eat that now. I run over with bikes, I run over with Gene Stealers, I redeploy neophytes, and by the end I've killed every little foot lad on the board, except for some Croot Hounds and a Shaper who are hiding in a corner, stopping me teleporting in there. Devilfish is blown up. A lot of the lads inside have died getting out, and they lose a few more to morale, and they get cleaned up in the early exchanges of the next turn. So I would say it's a real hammer blow because it hurts the tower a lot, because now he's going to have to work out how to play the mission, things like aerospace, etc., with just his surviving assets, and he's going to need to use them very, very carefully. Luckily for Zach, and all credit to him, he was a careful fucking player. He played it beautifully. He had basically abandoned the half of the board where I'd hit him hardest, and just spent the entire game keeping his whole army's back to one side, whilst continuing to fire and fade and shoot and clear me out and whittle me down. Because obviously he outshoots me, right? When he gets a bead on me, he kills my stuff off like no one's business. And the neophytes come down, they do something, he picks them up. But he was very, very good at stopping me getting exposed angles for the rest of the game. Did a remarkable job, which meant my ambush score was actually really low, because I was getting crossfire kills, but he was making it so I couldn't get exposed. And because I'd killed all the light stuff early, this actually ended up counting against me, because if I could have just farmed those assets later on, I could have got my ambush score a little bit higher and scored some more points. And he was also, because he used his Kroot Shaper, and he just put the focus on, and because of the scarring pushes you close, I didn't really want to be dropping into the deployment zone to be ticking off more points on Bruise Swarm either, because that felt like there wasn't anything useful or important to be doing with that. And he was pressuring my objectives very aggressively, and I was needing to hold on there. And I was definitely holding on a bit jammily at times with leadership and regenerating neophytes and all those sorts of things. So although I've hit him really hard and I put him on the back foot on his primary and shut him down for the first few turns, he just hangs in there. There's a couple of really crucial turns where one Neo Brick comes down, bounces off of the Crisis suits. I've whittled down all of the sort of defenses that they have in the turn before, so it should be the turn that they go, and then I just don't quite manage to get through them. And also his Cold Star, I get some guns into and just don't quite manage to drop him because some in-runs get made. Or saves get made. I don't know if he's got an in-run or not. But essentially, I think those two moments mean that he just about has enough assets to pull the score back at the end. So it's about a 12-8. For most of this game, it looks like I'm going to score higher than that, and it's going to be all right. But he manages to get a lot of his secondary scoring done in the end, and brings it back. And so I beat him 12-8, which I'm very happy with, but wasn't quite the most it could have been. And is only because Zach was just tenacious and played super, super well. And he plays CSC as well. He was telling me that Rusted Claw is his favourite. We agreed Rusted Claw is the coolest one. But he just did so well to just make my scoring really, really difficult across that game. So well played, Zach. It was a wonderful technical game.
And we should probably rewind in time, because I just totally forgotten this was the round where Tom was
the final game. But that's all right. We'll catch that up.
Yeah, because we'll rewind and set the scene shortly.
Yeah, set the scene.
Because Alex was done very quickly.
Yes.
Yes. So
I love this game.
Yeah, I'd hit Dylan, and what happened was, when you tell a command squad with Leontus and string everybody out to the entire deployment zone to tell them nobody comes within 12, they only get half the day of table to play in with a lot of reserves. It also helps when you go first, and he's left 2 Demonettes towards, and the 2 Flashhounds, able to be murdered by Cassikit.
Yep.
So once I killed everything that wants to raise a banner, run at me, he's left with 2 monsters hiding behind a wall, and I think 1 or 2 Demonettes and a couple Fleshhounds that had survived being shot. And suddenly that game becomes a very different proposition for me, in that as much as I can't come out, he's now got nothing to play the game with. I've got lots of things in reserve for Boots. I get space behind him because he doesn't have the units to stay home, so Boots is going to score incredibly high. And then in his second turn, when he comes out, I have a fancy banner to say, you don't get phase caps. So I can and do one-shot the Bloodthirster.
Was he the phase cap one?
Yeah, it was running the phase cap, Feel No Pain, Bloodthirster.
He was the phase cap one.
And he had the Scarbrand as well.
Yeah.
But when I turned
didn't
the
have it
case
for
cap,
long.
no, it came out. I don't think it even got a charge off. I think he failed a 4, 5, 6-inch charge, but only into like a random guardsman squad that I'd pushed forwards or something.
Yeah.
Fail that, and that gets picked up by the other squad of Kaskin after Bellicor has had some fun with my other one that came in. Yeah, Bellicor, of course, is then just stuck in the middle of the table because someone has to do Warp Ritual, and he's only got Bellicor and a Keeper of Secrets to do this with. So, yeah, it just ends up that I table him in 3 turns pretty much. And he clings on, Reality Rebels, scores decently. Like he does get his Warp Ritual. I have nothing to stop that. But I maxed my 97 points to his 58. So that's what, 14-6, something like that.
17-3, so
17-3.
There you go. I can't maths.
Great result. And Dylan massacred me with like light Harleys when it was like the boats 0. He killed my Drakari with them at a last team's event. I was up there. So thanks for avenging me, Alex. I appreciate that.
There you go.
It's good. It's good to have a little bit of sweet revenge.
Even through a proxy.
Yeah.
So we've got Dave has kind of lost 14-6 into the Sisters. Paul lost 12-8 into the Chaos Knights, which is actually a really good result. We're really happy with that. Jamie's been blatted. Jack is playing into the guard, and again, it's like an 11-9, 9-11 kind of thing, but actually manages to break out the 14-6, as Jack has wanted to do. Lee plays out of his skin and grabs an 11-9 win, which was really impressive into Iron Hands.
That was very nicely done. Yeah,
sounds like Bellicor and the Beasts of Nurgle were doing the Lord's work,
doing what they do.
And I was playing into World. So I've not played this before. I got first turn. And obviously, so the things I know about World Eaters are that they score really, really well, and you can't really stop their scoring. So he had 2 drop Dread Claws full of Berserkers, 2 units to 10, and then he also had Angron. And I'm like looking at his stuff, and I'm like, it's not that much stuff. No, I just get my Death Gesture into one of those 10-mans, and I'll be fine. And as I'm playing this game, I'm like, there is definitely a world in which I can win that game. And we spoke about it afterwards, and he said he had it as somewhere between an 8-12 and a 12-8. I think he's absolutely right. I think it's always, in terms of player skill, if you both understand the matchup and you both play it as well as can be, I think the World Eaters our game is around that kind of level. For me, the issue was, so I got first, and I was just remembering games where I've lost for being too aggressive. I'm like, right, I'll just screen out the Dread Claws, and I'm happy for them to drop down in the middle because the Berserkers get out, charge my Harlequin boats, I run them away. Jobs are good. So I set that all up. I've killed his spawn and some jackals. Well, I killed 9 out of 10 jackals who go and sit on a bloody objective so they can die and score more points. Love that secondary. Yeah. And he drops the Dreadclaws down, both in the middle. Great. And then he doesn't get them out. And I'm like...
They're not a drop pod. You're not forced to get out.
I was like, oh, shit. That causes a bit of an issue now. Because I've got Angron on one of my home field objectives.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've got to try and deal with Angron and these 2 Dreadclaws, and then the guys are going to get out and charge me. Like, oh, no. So the Incarn's kind of teleported over, and the way it's worked is I basically end up focusing down one flank, and he's coming down the other. I don't really know what to do about Angron in this game. I don't really know what to do with the Dreadclaws. I end up dropping one of the Dreadclaws. No one dies on the get out. And then he's like, oh, just remember that when you shoot my Berserkers, they move, and they can move into combat. I'm like, oh, no, I didn't know that. Well, once he said it, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember hearing that, whenever they came out ages ago. So these 10-man Berserkers quite easily just, I shoot into them with something, and suddenly they're just engaged with my screens.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, man, this is... I've not played this right at all.
They're horrible, aren't they?
And essentially, the way the game goes is that he just denies me primary constantly. He just keeps throwing stuff, and Angron's just having a field day, like smashing up whatever he wants. And we scored pretty much the same on secondaries, but I only scored 17 on primary, and he scored his 45. And that was the difference between us. So he won 15-5. What he said I should have done was screened out ahead with my bikes to really make sure those dread claws had to come down his deployment zone if he wanted to drop in turn 1. Then he comes and deals with my screens with his more valuable stuff. I kill his valuable stuff with my shooting and a bit of combat, and by dealing with those things, I'm then resetting those screens if he hasn't killed the dread claw, if he hasn't put down the dread claws. And then I'm kind of getting to deal with his charge rather than him getting to deal with me. And at the end of the game, he's got the Invocatus and Angron left. Basically, is what all you've got left. And I still had a reasonable amount. The Incarn, unfortunately, because I just didn't have places to teleport to, the Incarn had to withstand a charge of 10 or 9 Berserkers and lived on 1 wound. But it doesn't do much on 1 wound with only 4 attacks. But no, Joe was a lovely opponent, really professional in his execution, but also really, really nice, and we had a really good chat after the game. And he's clearly an exceptional player, and it was an all-round fun experience, really, playing Ireland. We had really nice games.
They were brilliant.
Lovely lads.
Really enjoyed playing them. They were very lovely and friendly to us. They'd clearly cooked up some really interesting lists. Like that Drakari list is just pure innovation. I've just not seen someone never seen someone run that. The World Eaters one was a bit different. All credit to them. They were a lovely bunch, and we wish them well.
And the frustrating thing was that I guess halfway through, a bunch of us have lost. They've just gone off to have a shower, get ready for food, and that. And we've got a few close wins and stuff. We're not really paying attention to the actual overall score.
I think we assumed that we'd lost quite a while before we had.
Yeah. And so we kind of go off and we're like, it's 8:45. Our table's booked for 8:45. Some of us still at the venue. So we go and we leave Tom to his own devices. And Tom obviously grinds out the 12-8.
Yeah.
At which point, if you remember correctly, we said that an 86 is what you need to win, and the 12-8 is what they needed to get.
Their captain comes over and cuddles Zach and goes, "That 8 is what we needed." And they were delighted. They were very chuffed. Zach was very chuffed, and it was mixed emotions. I think I just assumed we were so much more out of the round than that myself.
I think we all did.
Quite a while before that. And then, as you say, because everyone else had gone home, I assumed that everyone else had looked and that was the case. And this is one of those things where, again, it's very easy to look back over and go, I'd have done differently. But actually, I think, as I say, the crucial moments in this game were me killing all of Zach's utility at the start and then not being able to farm it for other points, and then probably not choosing to. I needed to get a couple of things into his deployment zone and just lose them as assets in the battle. And then my secondaries are a bit higher, and then it's probably enough. But Zach played like an absolute maniac to stop me getting those easy points as well. So it's one where I don't know. I think Zach was such good value for his 8, but I also didn't know that I was scrapping around to try and maybe try and get one more point and get us over the line to a draw. But that's one, as you say, we were knackered. It had been a really hostile environment in there in terms of the heat, and we were all a bit exhausted. So, and I was just as ready for food and bed as anyone else. So, I think we chalked that one up. And when we're sort of out to try and make a mess in the future, we won't be letting the team go back before we know how the rounds ended.
Yeah, and it's just all it takes is someone just to be adding up the scores on the fly.
Yeah.
And knowing what sort of things we need.
What is that team coach role they have as the 9th player?
Yeah.
That
the Jack Chapman, if you will.
Just tells everyone what's happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Still a cracking round though. Really, really enjoyed
it. Really good. And then we went and ate lots of food.
Oh, so much. A lot of chicken was consumed, as is our way.
Yes.
As is convention.
And Baileys. We had Baileys.
I didn't get the Baileys because I had to go to a different hotel.
Yeah, you missed that. But we had found out our pairing.
We did.
And the issue with when there's only 10 teams is that everyone plays each other quite quickly,
Yeah.
especially near the top end. So we were sitting 5th at the time, and we got paired into Wales because Wales played 2nd, 3rd, and 4th already.
Yeah.
So we got paired into Wales. Now, obviously, Wales, WTC team, very strong. Look down the lists, and we're like, okay, yeah, it's quite funny. The first half of our matrix, we went through the first half, and it was just a sea of like 1s and 2s.
Yeah, it looks so bad.
And it was awful. And then when we got to some of the other lists, we started to kind of come up with a few more like 3s and the odd 4. But you could see, I think we were probably a bit battle shocked to use a contemporary term, perform like our confidence maybe was slightly low.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
But we knew they had space rules, and we had no answer to space rules.
No.
And we knew they had some other stuff, and we did the matrix, but we didn't really have that much about it. We started talking about it a bit more on the morning, and we knew that we were going to start with Tom.
Yeah.
And
did we do that in the end?
Yeah,
we did. Okay. I was keen to get the space rules if I could, because I felt like I could at least shave some points off that.
Yeah, exactly. But then we just started like reading. One thing we didn't do, and I guess it was just because it's a bit too intimidating, we didn't massively think about what we thought they would lead with across the game. But this time we were like, they've got to lead with Necrons, haven't they? Because they've got this Necron list, which is 197 wounds.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, it's just going to be Necrons. That's got to be their defender. That is clearly a
Who kills that?
Yeah, like it's just going to score well. And we're like, right, who wants to play into it? And Jack's like, well, I will mulch through that.
He really wanted to,
so
didn't he?
Whatever you put down with me, they will choose. And we're like running through this, and then suddenly we're just like, the Grey Knights get into Necrons. And yeah, they might be actually.
Yeah.
So we're like, we'll put down Grey Knights and Necrons. And I think in this game, we pair incredibly well.
Yeah, I think we nailed it.
I think everything went. Do you remember? So we put down GSC, and they put down Orcs and GSC. And we're like, oh, shit. Tom has looked at the GSC list and gone, this is a really bad GSC list for me. It's like a really bad mirror.
It's the industrial cult, and it's the mini transhuman, which just means he shoots better than me and he's harder to wound than me, which means if we go head to head with the same units, I'm just not going to kill him as well as he's going to kill me.
We're immediately like, fuck, they have completely done us in here.
Yeah, they've nailed it. I was like, this is literally my nightmare.
They've completely outpaired us round one. And then we go, well, we'll just have to take the GSC. And they go, oh, shit, we've put down the wrong pair, the wrong cards. We didn't mean to put down GSC. We meant to put down World Eaters. And we're like, oh, well, I mean, we don't mind if you want to change that. And they're like, oh,
I'll be a sport. I'll take the World Eaters.
Well, I mean, if you really insist, I mean, you guys should be better, you know. You should have made us.
Yeah, honestly, international.
You are practiced at this, man.
It's all fun and game, guys. You know, we'll let you off this one time. Secretly going, thank fuck, because they were, and obviously the guy hadn't read the lists at all. So we got it sort of around. So Tom got paired into World Eaters. But overall, as I said, the pairings actually went really well. So Jack is playing into Custodes. Paul's playing into Gene Stealer Cult, which he really wants to play into. I'm playing my Yanami into Orcs, which I got absolutely smashed by previously, but I feel like I learned a lot from that game, and I think it can be playable. They've got Drukhari, and we're like, whoever plays into Drukhari needs a big win here.
Yeah.
And that job is given to Alex.
Yeah.
Well, this is interesting. Okay. Dave goes into the Necrons. And their space rules go into...
I think it was Lee who got the space rules.
Lee, we was like, sorry, Lee, mate. Lee got under the bus.
Right.
Under the bus, yeah. Well and truly under the bus.
Tom's got the World Eaters.
Yep.
And the Astra Militarum of the Guard, Ash Loftus, who's a very good player, is playing into Jamie with Death Guard.
Yeah.
And we're just like, look, Jamie, you're taking the guard for us. Just do what you can, please.
Yeah,
and
keep it as close as you
Jamie's
can.
actually a very good player for being thrown under the bus or into a bad.
Oh, look, his mentality is absolutely flawless. Well. He never complains, or when he does, it's as a joke, and he just keeps going back in for more, doesn't he? Like I think he's got the perfect,
as well. Like, he was very happy
mentality.
To just take the team.
Yeah, can't fault his mentality at all. I think he's wonderful.
And when he actually listens to you and does play defensively, it can actually work.
Absolutely.
So Dave kicks off, and he's going pretty well. The result here says 16-4 to Necrons, which wasn't the result.
What?
So I don't know what's going on here. There's been some weird typings in the result here, because Dave actually won. Game.
Dave did win that game, yeah.
Yeah, Dave did. So I don't know why it says 16-4 to Wales.
Interesting. I remember looking at the margin afterwards and thinking that's not what happened.
Yeah. A bit of controversy. 6 Ross versus Wales.
Goodness gracious. Oh, yeah, let's have some beef with Wales. Why not?
Yeah. Jamie lost 14-6, which actually was really good.
He capitalized super well. There was a one slightly off turn of shooting from the guard, and he was able to get some stuff into places and make that a lot more trouble than it was going to be before that. So I think he did that really well.
Yeah, no, that was really good. Lee, as we kind of expected, got 20-0'd.
Yeah, which is sad.
He's, is what it is.
You take it on the chin.
You do.
Paul, playing into Gene Stealer, he's beaten Gene Stealer before, and he managed to do that again. He won 11-9.
Yeah, that's close, to be fair. Although, again, the GSC player told us he took 7 points. That was in his exact words on a comment. So, again, that was a 13-7, I think, that game.
Okay, interesting.
What's going on here?
Have we been done out of points?
Jack Tight, of course, delivers the 11-9.
Yeah, Jack Tight is so consistent. He's remarkable.
Machine.
Yeah.
And then that just leaves us three. So I played into Ben with his orcs. Ben was like a true gent, very lovely, very keen to show. He had this grot, basically his armor is all grots and converted grots and stuff, along with all the orcs. It was like a Death Skulls pressure list kind of thing, but a control list, I guess, more.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When I played it last time, the guy was like, you were too aggressive, you should have held off. And this time Ben was like, you weren't aggressive enough. This is a hard one to judge. I made a few quite good moves. I thought I went first again for the 4th time in a row. And I made some nice blocks and stuff. Only they didn't turn out to be blocks. There were a few movement issues in this game. And just stuff like, you can't really consolidate in that direction because there's other stuff in the way. Basically, I tried to put a block off with 2 units so you couldn't disembark out through. And he was like, I think I can fit through this gap. I hadn't declared my intent that I was trying to block him off. So then we went to measure it, and then the terrain got knocked. So suddenly the gaps widened, and now you're never going to return it to where it was. If I had said, right, I'm consolidating here to block you off, then I would have felt well within my rights, no, you can't fit through the gap. But because I hadn't, it kind of just becomes a bit awkward, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And what that meant was he was able to get out a big blob of stuff into some Shroud Runners that I had positioned on an objective to be completely safe. I didn't have enough pressure on the left-hand side. What was the mission?
This was secure missing artifacts with the moving objectives.
He'd got to move the first objective out wide, which was a shame, really. I actually made a mistake with the objective I moved. I moved the wrong one when it came to my turn. So that was a bit silly. But he played it really well. He was just very loose with the movement. And it just becomes a bit awkward, doesn't it, when you keep saying, are you sure that's 18 inches? Because it
looks a lot like 20-something.
Yeah, that's exactly. When you're playing a combat player, that is always one of the most frustrating things, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But no, he was still a lovely guy. And he said he had it as a 2 on his matrix, so I should have won that, but I lost 16. I'm still not entirely sure it's that. Maybe it is, I don't know.
I think orcs can always put the absolute shutdown on someone. They've always got
that Death Skulls list plays the primary well. Sort of thing.
Exactly
keeps taking your primary off.
Yeah, which is exactly what he did, and I couldn't really kill him quickly enough. So because the objective was moved out, I was only ever scoring really a 4, and he kept putting multiple units on his out of area objective. So it also meant I then wasn't scoring the 3 for my secure missing artifacts objective because that was off out to the side, and I didn't put enough stuff over there. So I didn't get it right at all, but I felt like I played better than the results suggest, if you see what I mean.
Nice.
So yeah, how about you, Tom?
So I had World Eaters, and I was very confident in World Eaters because I played it a lot now, and it was another sort of relatively familiar list. This one had Angron on the pod, so some more tech for dropping stuff in. And this was a real game of two halves because I nailed the start of this game. I absolutely nailed it, and I played a lovely chap called Tom, who I believe has been in and around Team England at different points. I think he's been playing a very long time, quite an old hand. And we had a lot of fun with this cheeky chappy. I would describe Tom as he's been in this world a long time, and I felt like I had the early exchanges of this really well because I'd placed the Clan of Us on one flank, so he couldn't drop his pod on my side objective, which is what he was looking to do. I was very well positioned in terms of he got first turn and all my blitz was set up really nicely to spring a big counter offensive. I blew up the pod. He lost a bunch of berserkers getting out of it. I yeeted Pure Strains up the middle of the board and took his back objective turn 1. So I did a whole bunch of things I was very happy with, and then in the next couple of turns again kept shutting his primary down and playing well. But I think the issue I had was that I was getting carried away. I felt like I was playing better than my opponent. Felt like I was in a good position in the matchup. And then I stopped pragmatically assessing what I needed to do in the game. And it's about midway through that game, I needed to switch off of shut him down, go on the offense to I've got a points lead. I need to keep assets back and stay alive because I'm also end of turn. And that's not going to matter if all my stuff is dead and I can't push to get that primary advantage at the end. So I got a bit too close, lost a few too many assets, continuing to slug for his side of the board in about turns 3-4, which I shouldn't have done. Should simply have kept that stuff back. And I also probably had a good opportunity to go for Angron and knock Angron out and opted to carry on killing the other stuff. I'm very allergic to killing Angron because I hate killing stuff that can potentially come back. But at that moment in the game, actually looking at it objectively, Angron was the only thing that was going to be able to cover that ground and get over there and smash up my backfield at that moment in time. The other stuff would have taken at least a turn. So I should have gone for Angron. I absolutely should have taken him out at that moment in the game and then kept stuff back and played to try and snatch a 12 at the end. There was a very funny moment. My turns 1-2 went so well. Tom just looks at me and goes, 10-10 and go to the bar. And at that point, I'm like, no, I'm taking this, man. I'm going to keep going. But as it was, I ran out of puff and Tom pushed up very well. I still kept his primary down all game. But again, his secondary game is very strong. The GSC secondary game is a little worse now that it's been nerfed. Brood Swarm, you really feel that not being an auto 15 these days. That does make a huge difference to them. And so he pipped it. I think it was just on the threshold, and he just managed an 11-9 to him. So he did great staying in the game when I'd been in the Ascension, and I needed to adapt better. And probably my own confidence got the best of me in that one because I'd been winning all weekend, and I was like, I'll just win another one. It's fine. And I learned my lesson.
So that was an 11-9. So we just finished with Alex, who's been tasked with a big win.
Go on, Alex.
I have. And it's a Drukhari list that's the sort that I quite like to get into. There's not as much fast stuff. There is the anti-tank consists of 2 Dark Lances and Drazar.
Yeah, that's not going to do it.
That's the end of their anti-tank.
Yep.
So I get to go first. I managed to pull the objectives, so you've got the one on the big L that ends up slightly closer in the open for both of us, and then the 2 side ones kind of go in the corners, and that suits me absolutely fine to start playing banners. Problem is that Lehman Russes get a +1 to hit, and Venoms are negative, and there's a Woods in the middle of the table. So there's always this annoying Venom that keeps living.
That's what
as well as the Hemoxites that are just towing onto the objective when I can't put enough into it to actually knock his primary off, despite it being in the open across the table from me.
Hemoxites are god tier. They're so good.
And if I decided to just screw the Venom, just let it go, and just kill the Hemoxites, I'd probably end up knocking his primary off. As it is, I get to go first again, so that's 4 and 4 for the first turn as well. He's got a Lehman Russ with Heavy Flamers and the Cass can come, take his side objective, and just almost delete everything there, which kills his banners. I killed all of his things that he wants to do behind enemy lines with as well, but just can't knock his primary all game. So I score almost everything I physically can, but he's just clinging on to that primary score. So it ends up a 96-76. By a point, it's a 13-7. And if that damned Venom had died, I'd have got something like a 15-5 or 16-4.
Well, it's funny because on here it says you won 17-7.
That's an impressive 1 out of 20.
Yeah. So well done on your 17-7 win.
Yeah. Who put the scores in for this last round?
The captain.
Sounds like he just guessed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have done too much different there. Like just dice, little bit of could have gone a bit more cutthroat, but you give the Dark Elder a little bit of an inch, and they suddenly end up charging you, taking all the infantry off, and they're in your home field, stopping my banner score. So I have to just hold a bit further back than I want to.
So I don't know what the end score was, but we lost.
We did lose. I don't think this one was close. Was it? I think we had a couple of wins, but not enough across the board.
Yeah. And so it's sitting at 1 win, 1 draw, and 2 losses now. But 2 losses at the international team. So.
Yeah, which is kind of what you'd expect. Certainly up until this weekend, definitely what we would have expected. Yeah. I think having played them now, I'm like, let's do it again, because I think absolutely we're in those games.
A little bit more practice.
We are right in those games, yeah. Which is quite a nice feeling.
So in our final game, we got drawn into some Yorkshire lads.
Yes.
Yorkshire Coast Raiders. And this was really interesting. So Yorkshire Coast Raiders had a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
They only had 6 players.
Yeah.
So the way this works is you can kind of use your pairings.
You still get to place the cards down for the players that aren't there, essentially, right?
So you're getting to use those players to try and draw out or to draw out the matchups you want to try and avoid, I guess, and try and generate good matchups elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, at the same time, you're starting 40-0 down, which is less than ideal. Yeah. So it's really hard. So we didn't have time to do our matrix, so we had like 2/3 of a matrix, and we're just trying to think like who's got the bad matchups in this game, and who's like.
I mean, with their ability to take some of our teams out, though, it's not actually that hard for them to get a couple 20-0s on us.
No, that's exactly it.
Right?
Yeah, you can definitely win these rounds.
Exactly.
By
and they had done
that.
They've won 2 rounds so far. I think one they had an extra player to help with, but they've won 2 rounds. So we just kept throwing out Death Guard. Just take away Jamie. Poor Death Guard. He's taken the hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, let's let Jamie finish in style with a 20-0. Just keep throwing them out. And they're like, no, take Jamie back. They're like, we quite fancy you playing into
Death we'd love to play the Death Guard,
so the first one we lose is... So I think, first of all, we threw out Grey Knights and Death Guard. And they took the Grey Knights out of the equation. So the Grey Knights are now gone.
Yeah.
And we keep pushing. And they've got some matchups which are... They've got bloody Chaos Knights again.
Oh, God.
They keep not showing that off. They've got Guard again. And we kind of just lead to a situation where we get some okay pairings, but I haven't filled out the matrix fully. Just kind of gone with the gut. So we've got Grey Knights into their Necrons, which actually we would want anyway. But so that's a 20-0 win. So well done, Dave. Well played. Eventually, the way the pairings work out is that Alex doesn't get a pairing with his guard.
Yeah.
They
had a choice of Chaos Knights into Death Guard or Imperial Guard, and there is a definite preference if you're the Chaos Knights player as to which of those you pick.
Yeah.
So that means Alex got a 20-0 win later, in theory, in the sisters.
It counts as a 20-0, so I'll take it.
Undefeated all weekend.
Yeah.
Their Ultramarines player chose me.
Yep.
And it was a shooty Ultramarines list, so I was pretty happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, right, Jack, put this to bed, mate. You're going to go into Tau. Stop being a pussy. Go get a 20-0.
Yeah. We were kind of talking ourselves up because we were sort of like, it's the end of the day. We want to try and finish as high as we possibly can, which means we need points in this round. And we were all sort of talking each other like, shall we just absolutely go for it? And Jack, who'd been very beautifully and elegantly getting those narrow wins whenever we needed them all weekend, we were like, just go and just see.
Like, if you tell me, I'll go. I will do it. I'll go. Yeah. I'll go for it. I'll go for it.
We were like, just go for it. Just go. Absolutely go.
4 games of just trying to hold back.
Yeah, go and fill your boots.
It's your turn.
So he got Tau and he went off to try and do that.
Lee went into guard.
Guard, indeed.
Which he didn't really want.
No.
And as we said, Jamie. Jamie went into Chaos Knights, and Paul went into Custodes. And it was like an MSU style, just a little bit.
Emperor's Chosen, yeah.
I was quite keen for that. Then we have Tom, Big Balls, GSD.
Yeah.
It's like, give me those damn Tyranids.
I want to eat my daddy.
I was very keen to have the Tyranids because it's a matchup that, I mean, this is obviously, if anyone remembers Innes's flirtation with GSC earlier on in the edition, the main reason he was doing that was they have a very nice matchup into Tyranids, which were a big deal at the time. So even when Tyranids were very strong, GSC had a good game into them. For a whole bunch of mathematical reasons, which we can talk about later with the game. But yeah, so I was keen for that. And yeah, I'd had a bit more of a weekend of getting nice matchups for myself this time. That's not been my usual. But I think in this one, they did choose me though, right? Did they not? They put the Tyranids up for me.
Yeah, they gave you the choice of Tyranids or something, and you were like, Tyranids.
It didn't matter what the other one was at that point.
Yeah.
Fuck the team. I want to kill Tyranids. Essentially what happened. And you beat the Tyranids?
Did I beat the Tyranids? I played Ben, who was actually an excellent Tyranids player. Really, really good. Could tell after the first few moves. There were a couple of surprises in this. It was double Malicept Tyranids, so I was a bit like, Psychic Mortals. Like Zone Throat, Neurothroat, double Malicept. Like, okay, there's quite a lot here that is actually quite terrifying to me. But he just doesn't have enough stuff, and I have a ton of stuff, and I hit him too much on my terms in this matchup. That's very much how it goes. He got first turn, meant he had to be aggressive. He ran both the flanks, and he also put like his Neurothrope and his Zone Thropes in the middle. That's bait. He very much wants me to come and try and deal with the zones and the Neurothrope, bounce off Invuns. I completely ignore the middle. I play both flanks. I kill the Maliceptor on one side, kill the Carnifex on the other. He does do the Tyranid special of getting some Gaunts back and getting a 12. Because I can just never judge how many guns I need to kill Gaunts. But then in his turn, having lost some of those flank assets, he then basically has to put all his valuable stuff front and center on the different sides to fight the game. And this is really funny because at exactly that moment, he takes his turn 2 and he just starts rolling a cigarette. Just like with the manner of a man who's about to be taken into the woods and put down. And I was like, do you want to go for a break? And he was like, nah, do this. and then we'll go. And so like 60 neophytes come down, all the big bugs go, all the little bugs go, and he's sort of scrapping with a hive tyrant on one flank. And neophytes are gradually just bibbling their way over to take his backfield. But the best bit of this game is every leadership test I had to make, I rolled a 1. Literally every single one. I think I made 5 on 1s. The first one I rolled was like, I'm going to roll a 1, and I rolled a 1, and that set the scene because I rolled a lot of 1s. And then he was like, I think you're cheating. I wasn't cheating. No, we had a lot of fun with this. Ben was really actually probably the funniest person I played all weekend. I really liked Ben. But I also, every time I needed to regen neophytes, it was like 5, 6, get as many special guns back as you want. So just even he was in a rough spot, and then I just basically the dice just decided I was going to have everything I wanted for the whole game.
Except for the Neurothrope, right?
Except the Neurothrope, right? Which is wandered to the middle.
Which was amazing.
So the Neurothropes come to the middle. It's done Walk Ritual twice. The second time it does it, it perils is. So it does 3 wounds to itself. So the Neurothote's got 2 wounds. He casts Catalyst on it. So it's got a 3-up Invan, 5-up Feel No Pain. And I shoot an entire army at it. And I do 1 wound.
Not even joking. It's the entire army here.
Yeah. Like just every shot, every gun. I charge it with 20 neophytes. They're all clubbing it, trying to finish it off with their little fists. And it just will not die. Just will not die. It goes 1-to-1 with the Neos for like another turn before finally.
It's not even 1-to-1. It actually kills more of them.
It does kill more of them than they kill of it, and it's just remarkable. And then we have this lovely break outside. It's chucking it with rain. We're getting absolutely drenched and like talk about our lives and where we're from and stuff. And it was. I think for me, it was the most like Warhammer experience game of the whole event. Right? It had all of it. It was silly. It was funny. There was some ludicrous stuff happening. And we both had a lot of laughs and really got to know each other. So that's the best game of the weekend for me by a mile. So thank you, Ben.
Lovely. Alex?
I had a lovely game where I got to stand around, chat with Scrivo and play at being a coach.
And that was actually really helpful. I think this game kind of, what we'd spoken about on the Sunday morning was just that level of communication, just a lot more like when it's not your turn, just have a check-in with everyone and just let you know how it goes. And what's really helpful is when you've got Dave and Alex patrolling, like between Alex is sending updates on how each game is going. It just gives you that good like that impression.
Where's that? Do I need to push for another couple points, or actually can I just hold it safe? Right?
Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that was just really helpful and just kind of adds that level of if you do want to be taking teams seriously, actually it's really, really helpful to have that.
It's not a roll to sniff at.
No, I think it's actually invaluable. I think teams that have them do very well.
No wonder the top teams do it. Who knew? Something there. And my final game was, again, I kept playing team captains, was into their captain James with his Ultramarines, which had lots of Dreadnoughts, Guilliman, and that sort of thing. And I didn't get to go first, which was really a shame because I had a lot of lovely charges. My striking Scorpions were going to go straight into those Desolators.
Oh, that would have been so good.
We're playing the bombs mission, aren't we? So lots of little actions everywhere.
Yeah,
that didn't help the Tyranids either.
Tag a bunch of Dreadnoughts. Oh, it was going to be glorious. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do that. But then he was like, I can't really see anything. Unfortunately, he could just about see my Wave Serpent with 1 Contemptor. And he'd Seal of Oath, whatever it is. My Wave Serpent was his choice. And that died immediately.
Welcome to Ultramarines.
This was quite painful. Anything, obviously, that was out in the open did die. I was a bit annoyed. He kind of managed to knock me down to a 4-turn 2. That was just slightly poor positioning by my part. But I was always very in control of this game. And it was just how big a margin could I develop, and managed to kill Guilliman turn 2, and he didn't get up. Just Death Jester. Death Jester.
The Death Jester killed Guilliman.
Yeah.
What?
Not one shot.
I've
done some mortals to Guilliman with Rangers like turn 1. I've got so many shots from snipers, which as soon as I've got a wound dust, I can just make it mortal.
Yeah, you can
a
really
wide grenade to help contribute because he didn't really screen out Guilliman. And yeah, the Incarn did come out to play till turn 4. Crazy. And yeah, I won that one 14-6, but full credit to James for like ticking over with some little things. And when he got the Redemptors into the middle of the board, they obviously took a little bit of shifting. But yeah, that was Eldar's last ever run out.
It was a very 10th edition game, really. That Seal of Oath is the Space Marines, but instead of a once per game thing, you now do it every single turn, and snipers are back.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's very true.
You'll get to play games like that again, don't worry.
Yeah, the snipers just get, there's a character, boom, dead. There's a character, boom, dead. And because I was able to kill the psychos, that obviously made Walk Ritual a lot easier.
Yes.
But no, very enjoyable game. And we ended up obviously winning that pretty comfortably. Lee was the final one to finish, and he managed to grab a 15-5 win into the card.
He did.
Which was awesome.
Noblings love to bad touch a Rogue Dawn.
Yeah, there was a lot of bad touching going on in that game. They didn't finish either. I think Lee would have been good value for a greater margin if they'd finished the round.
Yeah.
The Jack Tight story, though. Let's do it.
Jack Tight. So Jack Tight is there like... Well, I didn't actually get to watch the game. So Tom, you were next to it, weren't you?
Jack Tight, yeah. So Jack Tight, it's worth saying, my Nids player, the quality of Ben as a player was such that he turned what absolutely is a 20-0 into an 18-2 by just, again, fighting tenaciously the whole way through the game. And again, he was really enjoying it, even though it was a massively one-sided situation. So all credit to him. I respect players like that. On the other table, I've got Lee Bad touching the guard to the right of me, and on the left, Jack Tight is deployed hyper-aggressively, ready to go, with the Tau. He's got the Lord Invocatus. He can pre-game move if he wants. Tau player's there. Jack rolls a 6 to go first. World Eaters fucking fly up the board. All the screens go right away. He's yo-yoing through them. He did say after the game, he was like, I sent my 8-bound through the screens. With hindsight, could have just done that with Berserkers and not traded all my 8-bound into their shooting. But basically, he just boxed the Tau in a corner and just kept battering them until they had no points and the game was over. It was amazing. It was so angry and so aggressive.
All that pent-up rage that Jack might have. You think Jack's quiet? So much anger.
Yeah, but that's how I think in my head. That's how World Eaters play, right? Even though actually, whenever I play them, it's this techie, cagey, primary, careful game. Throw out your one Berserker squad. God, heaven forbid you send 2. This was full send, and it was nice to see full send at the end of the day, just absolutely mulching through these Tau.
Yeah, I come over a couple times. First time he's kind of he's got the 8-bound the cast in the middle. It's like I posted in the chat. We could go either way. We need to see what the Tau do. I come back at the end of the next turn, and there's just World Eaters everywhere. Except for the spawn, which are holding out for the cold stuff. There's 3 spawn in his side of the table, and then the rest of the army is just in the Tau deployment zone.
So good. So aggressive.
It was a bit humiliating. Apparently, a bunch of Tau did like 6 wounds or some 4 out of 6 wounds to the Lord Invocatus in combat.
Yeah.
Really embarrassing. But
no, he's all about boosting movement. He doesn't know how to fight.
Yeah, no clue at all. But Jack said he was going to get 20-0, and he got a 20-0.
Yeah.
Hero.
Yeah. It's quite fun to play with such reckless abandon.
Yeah. Shout out to Jamie East for grabbing his first win of the weekend into the Chaos Knights matchup.
Yeah, that's good. See, we've nailed it because he's got through one of our worst possible matchups.
Absolutely. So he grabbed a 12.
And he did it whilst taking Engage, which just hero plays.
Yeah, absolutely.
And finally we have Paul, who I think was just having a chill game.
Yeah.
Just a fun time into Custodes. He lost 5-15. He said he made a few sloppy mistakes, but he didn't really care. He was just sending Azrael in and just having a fun time. And
that's nice. That's good.
It didn't really matter in grass.
That was a lovely moment where this last surviving Blade guard went in and took out the Blade champion.
Amazing.
Walked in, took him out.
So good. Getting the big
and
shiny
probably
girl.
died to contempt to Galatus.
Oh, that's great. That sounds like a fun game. They were a really nice team to play. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it's also I know I'm shouting at Ben a lot, but Ben hadn't lost up until that point. Ben was on a 4-game win streak for the weekend. He'd been absolutely smashing it. That's it. Don't underestimate him. I say Ben was a very good player with them and had certainly set himself up to be a really scary prospect into quite a lot of lists with those mortal wounds.
Fair play. So after all that hard work,
where we place
10 teams.
10 teams.
5th. So right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Pretty average.
Very average.
Well, you look at the overall score as well, right? It's a 2-win. It's a 2-loss and a draw.
2-1-2. But
I might call it.
Just perfectly average as all things should be.
You are welcome.
Just nailed it. We didn't want to let our fans down. We know that we've got a listenership who expect us to be bang average, and we were very careful to curate our results to get that outcome.
Delivered on our mediocrity.
Yeah, that's it.
You're welcome. But no, I mean, to be fair, our 2 losses were to the 2 international teams.
That's it. And we were so close, especially in the Ireland game. We were so close.
1 point from drawing the Ireland game, 2 points from a win into Leeds. Or Cons Yorks.
So again, still feeling very positive, aren't we?
Yeah, we didn't get to play Leeds Salt Miners A or Stonehammer.
No, it's a shame.
Came 3rd and 4th, maybe, or some 2nd and 4th. So that would have been nice to play. But yeah, an overall very positive experience. I think generally we paired well.
Yeah.
Played well. I think we're still learning about as a team how to manage those sorts of kind of events and that sort of thing.
For sure.
And for me, anyway, it's my final event. It was a nice send off for ninth.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was a nice snapshot of the late ninth meta, and it was just a lovely bunch of people to play with, and really a bunch of really lovely and smart players to have a bunch of games with. And so yeah, that's ninth done now. Get in the bin, ninth. You've been fun, and we look forward to a less lethal, better balanced game that's due to kick in about a week and deliver the 40k Nirvana you've all been looking for. Finally answer all your grievances and problems and give you safe, balanced, happy gaming for the rest of time.
And that will happen.
I promise you.
Yeah.
Promise you. James don't lie. James would never lie to us. Jack says, I got a 2-1-2-2. Well, Jack, that is the true plus spirit, and I'm proud of you. And sorry again for our game. We'll play again soon, and you can have the army that shits on mine instead. That seems fair. Right, let's rattle through some questions, and then let's go. I might actually just dunk myself under cold water after this. I don't know what you guys are doing. That's probably my plan.
You can see me going slightly more red if you're watching this one. It is still warm.
It is so hot. Right, podcast questions. Let's start with this one. This is from Just Make Stuff. What is your inner chimp most worried about regarding 10th right now? That is defined as the knee-jerk emotional response to sudden change. What are you saying? Mortal wounds?
No, my knee-jerk reaction concern is cards. So hated Maelstrom of War with a passion, and I hate cards. So that my knee-jerk reaction is, no, I like the missions, spruce it up, change it up, whatever, but don't make me use cards. That was my initial.
I'm the absolute opposite. I actually really like these cards. Yeah, me too. They're really done. They've done them really well. My problem is just they've told us no rerolls. There's all these rerolls and a mechanic called Devastating Wounds.
Yeah.
That feels abusable.
Yeah, I think it's rerolls and Devastating Wounds look scary. It's artillery for me. I'm a bit sick of artillery. It's been quite an artillery meta for the end of 9th. I don't enjoy that. And unless they do something quite drastic, it's going to be very artillery heavy going into early 10th as well. So that's the change that I react worst to. And I think to be honest, the other thing I dislike, in some ways, a Wild West is exciting and I'm well up for it. But one aspect of Wild West I resent is there's just going to be a bunch of people winning games because they've just got some stupid lawyered combo that someone hadn't dealt with in development, which they should have done. And that's fine. But I like winning games when the terrain is leveled out a bit and we're playing on similar ground and armies are a bit better balanced.
It's this late nights we've got used to having.
That's it.
What is a
nice.
Quite nicely balanced meta.
Yeah, exactly that. It's been pretty good. There have been some armies with a bit of a leg up, but it's not been anything like as egregious as it was in the earlier stages of 9th, and that's a bit of a frustrating stage. I say I'm actually more excited for testing games and making content testing games with my team at the moment than I am for events. I just feel it. You're just going to hit something that you've not seen before that does 40 mortal wounds because someone didn't check the fucking print. And that's fine, but that's not real competing. So it's like I think I might just have to switch my kind of competing brain off for a few months as this all levels out and we kind of get used to it. Okie dokie. Next up, Ultimate Fighter asks, what's everyone's feeling about using third-party and 3D printed models in competitive play? I ask as I often run the Cromlech Norzilla, that's a Squiggoth clone, but not in competitive play in our local store. Do you feel that should be more commonly allowed? I think a bit of it's fine, right? It does depend. For me, it really depends on the type of printing you're doing.
I think if it's for a weapon option or a little gubbin or something, it's a lot less egregious than someone printing the actual GW models at the right scale, the right thing. But again, if you're printing something that looks similar, is a similar size, but is clearly a not GW model, it's something else again. But it's just seeing people turn up with these 3D printed GW models is something that does annoy myself personally.
Yeah. I have no issue with 3D printing like Forge World type units because I think Forge World's already such a bizarre thing with sort of resin, and I don't think the quality of the models is that great, and you end up paying a lot for it. So I don't mind so much about that, but I do, whole armies I find a bit. It doesn't sit easy with me. I do think it's one of those areas where it probably speaks into that divide. I think there's a whole bunch of 40k players these days who are essentially computer gamers, and they essentially interact with 40k like a computer game. And I think to a lot of those players, 3D printing your parts makes complete sense, as does getting the best options as quickly as you can. I think for long-term hobbyists and collectors, it doesn't quite look and feel like
when
that.
someone prints 30 Sternguard veterans and you're there buying them at 30 quid for 5.
Yeah. Well, that'll be happening as we speak, I'm sure. But look, this is changing all the time, and different people will do different things, and it's about doing what you're ethically and morally happy with. I really enjoy buying GW stuff, as silly as it is. I love buying a stupid plastic kit and making it. Always been a big fan of that, and will continue to be. And then finally, with the indexes that have been shown so far, if you were able to make only one tweak to the core rules of 10th, what would you change, and why is it devastating wounds?
It's devastating wounds.
Yeah.
It's just in a world where you're trying to reduce killing power, and then you've got this mechanic which has always been the most powerful way of dealing damage because it spills over, and just can't be saved for the most part. And you've then increased that by an awful lot. It just makes no sense.
Do you think the railgun on the hammerhead goes from killing one thing really good to killing an entire squad? I mean, I was listening to that Fireside podcast with Big VJ today, and what he was saying actually, where you make it the same as like sustained hits. You go devastating wounds bracket 1, or devastating wounds bracket 2, and you go this one. You do critical wound, does this many extra mortars.
I think it's a bit of a shame, isn't it? Because I think the keyword system for the weapons,
it's amazing,
is a really nice way of tidying up how weapons work, and they've clearly put a lot of thought into some of it. And then there's just a few areas of it where they just haven't. It was obvious from the get-go.
They gave to a 10-year-old who was like, "Yeah, but death."
Yeah.
But I don't want to play for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. And so that's the issue. I think the other thing, artillery, I don't know. There's ways of, they've got to work out what they're going to do there. Having
artillery looks like a problem.
Artillery being able to ignore cover when that's supposed to be one of the things that things get to mitigate it. Artillery
also
being
to ignore the hit penalty.
Ignore
with
hit penalties.
Right.
No artillery should be able to do those things if that's the meaningful way of dealing with it. Or you bring in the same change as we had end of 9th, where there's an additional ballistic skill change and there's an additional boost to save for the defending unit, irrespective of cover. That helps a bit. But I do wonder if maybe just no rerolls of any kind for artillery. I think that would do it. No hit and wound rerolls, because that's, again, as we will see very shortly, that's what's going to do this.
I think that's also the main problem, though. Just the rerolls. I think it's everything together. Like the D cannon doesn't reroll.
It does, because it's an Eldar.
Well, it does, but you don't reroll, right? You just set.
No, you just use auto.
Right.
Yeah, in the case of the Decan, yeah, but Eldar will have other artillery that is very much using hit and wound rerolls, as will Marines. But yeah, it's just that's where there's going to be a lot of feel bads at the start of the edition, as far as I can see. But hopefully we learn that lesson quickly.
And that's it. Like, you go to the beginning of like kind of 8th, and it was like lots of flyers were broken. Then loads of librarians spamming mortal wounds from smites on 5s and those sorts of things. There's always an issue at the start of every edition. So you just hope that very quickly it gets tweaked, and in 4 years' time we don't remember this horrendous early period of the first 6 months.
That's exactly it.
There is talk of a day 1 FAQ coming, so we'll see if they do that, or it'll just be the 3 or 6 months time they figure it out and go, look, here's the solution, or at least a solution.
Yeah, completely. Right. Okay, I think that's everything we've got in the chat. I don't think we got any other questions in. So thank you very much to everybody for listening. It's been great. We have been the Plus. We are a thoroughly average team. We had a thoroughly average weekend, and we will see you again soon. Whoop! Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.